And we'd be late every week, and we'd always arrive with a McDonald's milkshake and a bag of records from Selectors. Hi, my name is Rich Dundas. I am, how do you describe it, the curator of IOWNYOU Records, owner of IOWNYOU Records. Stereotypically, I'm a white middle class indie kid, so I guess I started doing it in about 2004. My dad used to be a DJ when I was younger. He was a butcher, a vicar, and he was a disco DJ. And he had a series of 7-inch Motown disco records, so I grew up around that environment. I don't know off the top of my head. I've got a couple of these units. So one about this size, one that's double the size. Assuming there's 80 in each of these units, and not ignoring my stock of my record label releases, there's probably around about 11 of them, so 880. But if you talk about my stock, that's going to push us way over that. I've probably got more stock than I have actual records of my own. I guess it's all from when I was younger, because they're the formative years, so it was time spent in Selectors in Nottingham. But I guess every record shop I go in, it's always got some sort of experience that I enjoy. I guess looking into favourite record shops will provide me with a significant memory. But on the flip side is when I was working in Derby and Reveal Records, and that's where I actually started properly collecting records from there. Sadly, both shops are gone. There's Holt Vinyl Vault in Holt, in Norfolk, which is an old post office, which still operates as a post office, but it's mainly a record shop as well. So you walk in and it's just records everywhere. There's rooms full of records. You go to pay for a record, but you can also buy your stamps, and all the prices are written on stamps and stuff shoved on there, which I really like. Grey and Pink Records in Cheshire. Where I go in twice a year. I go around about the summer and around Christmas, and they remember me every single time. They know I'm always there to buy records, for soundtracks, sorry. If you ask me to choose one, Grey and Pink. I'll choose Grey and Pink, but I am ignoring all the wonderful institutions in Nottingham city centre. I think if I'm gravitating towards terrible records, it's going to be in the soundtrack. So the one that's immediately calling to mind is Staying Alive, the sequel to Saturday Night Fever, where one side is almost a medley of the Bee Gees' new music, not as good as Saturday Night Fever, and the other side are largely music by Frank Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's brother, because this film was directed by Sylvester Stallone. I would sing one of the tracks to you, but I'm going to save you that embarrassment. Dead! It is particularly good. It is particularly good, and if you've picked that up, you're welcome. Another record, it's got to be... I mean, the soundtrack itself is fine, but through its association with the film, it's garbage. Soul Man. Now, I don't know if anybody has seen this film, Soul Man. It basically killed the career of C. Thomas Howell. What it was about a guy who's down on his luck, he's got no money and he wants to go to college, and he finds out that there's a scholarship for African American individuals. So what he decides to do is take an overdose of tanning pills so that he effectively changes the colour of his skin so that he can have the scholarship to go to college. Very ill-advised film, offensive, but it's so innocent in the way that it does it, you can't help but feel a little bit sad for it. That is pretty amazing. Records, in a way, you associate their covers with the music inside, which is one of the reasons why I love vinyl, because it's inherently linked to the artwork. To see the artwork in isolation is incredibly difficult. The artwork that I enjoy is probably not the one that I think is technically very good. There's a record by The Fall, which I can't remember what it's called, it's a compilation, and The Fall are infamous for their terrible artwork design. But that record is a series of cut-out images, black and white images of the band, but on the back is a casualty list of all the members that haven't made it through the band. And at that point, it's incredibly small. And if you fast forward to 30 years into the future, it'll cover both sides of the artwork. I've got to say, it's a record that I've released myself, but Ben Newman's artwork that he's done for us for this record and the follow-up Turks in Record Arsenal are just incredible. And through working on records and getting them made, I actually do manage to separate the graphic design from the music, so I can look at that and appreciate it as an object in itself. And I think a record which I am quite fond of in its packaging is a compilation Lipstick Tracers, where it's actually a flocked cover. I've got another flocked cover from Beach House, but the fact that this is leopard print and flocked just make this very, very pleasing. One of the best records in here, and one of the best packaging, is Earth, Bees Made Honey and the Lion's Skull, which is in this kind of fake leather sleeve with a series of illustrations in here. It is an incredible record, this. What I do like about it, and this will make people cringe, but in the old house we suffered from condensation, and this record itself has got a bit of mould created on here. I quite like that. I kind of find that fitting for the record. It's Dark Star, the soundtrack to Dark Star, which is John Carpenter's first film. Film's great, soundtrack's alright. I have not found this anywhere else. And I bought this from a record shop, Church Street, Stoke Newington. How middle class is that? But yeah, from Stoke Newington, I can't remember what it was called. Lucky 7, I think it was called, that shop. And it was up on the top window, and it was 30 quid. And I went, yeah, don't have that one. I'm taking that to one of my favourite films, one of the greatest films I've ever made, the Goblin soundtrack to Suspiria. It's just recently, at the time of recording, it's recently been reissued. This is just an incredible soundtrack. It's one of the best film soundtracks, one of the best horror films, one of the best films ever made. I was unaware of Trunk Records and Johnny Trunk in particular until he invited Bron Records onto his programme, and then I've become instantly aware of what he did and a massive fan. And one record that I need to bring to attention is Galactic Nightmare, which was reissued by Trunk Records. It was originally released, it was a guy called, I'm trying to make sure I get his name right, I think it's Alan Jefferson, I think it is. Alan Jefferson, there he is. There's a man in Hull who was so enamoured with the War of the Worlds soundtrack, or the War of the Worlds music, that Jeff Wayne did. Got to get that right, because I always say Jeff Lynne, which would be a completely different War of the Worlds soundtrack. He was so obsessed with it, he decided to go home and make his own sci-fi epic. So he spent years, I think, I don't know how many years exactly, but years and years and years working on this piece of music, which he released on cassette tape via science fiction magazines in the 1980s and sold approximately 10 copies. A copy made it to Johnny Trunk about a few years back now, and he eventually released it on his only double album. And it's got all the artwork within there of all of Alan Jefferson's drawings and details and things like that. It's such a great record. But Trunk Records, I would highly recommend if you're into looking at old soundtracks or anything that might be off the beaten track. Check them out. I don't get asked to DJ a lot or do mixes because I guess you can't really dance to what I'm playing. There are certain tracks that I don't mean that in a mine is so obscure. It's just that some of it is unlistenable and I don't have any concept of rhythm and atmosphere. So records I put on are ones that I just love and remind me of a particular time. One record that I always kind of pull out is the soundtrack for Streets of Fire. If I'm trying to be a bit more edgy, I would put on the soundtrack to Deathline. But I always find that if I try and be edgy, I just end up looking more and more like a hipster than I currently do. But Deathline, this record I picked up in a shop called Milk and Mule in Birmingham, which is sadly gone, which was one of the best record shops I've been into. This film, Deathline, its alternative title is Raw Meat, and the film is about a series of people working in the London Underground who were trapped years ago and over the years inbred and became cannibals. So it's a series of inbred cannibals living in an abandoned underground line in London. And it's only 2 tracks, the main theme and incidental pieces. I must have spent tenner on this and it was worth every penny. So if I'm trying to be edgy, I'll put on the main theme from Deathline, which is this plodding da-dum, 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 like that. I'm going to have to be very careful because I'm sure I'll miss out somebody. But if those labels that I immediately work with and are good friends with, Hello Thought, which were by the loveliest guy in the world, Nick Lawford and Andrew Knight, who's also lovely. Gringo Records, Matt Newnham as well. Gringo Records are a Nottingham institution going 20 years, almost 21 years. They were influential to me in a way. When I lived in Cardiff when I was at university. I'm from Derby originally, came back into Nottingham, and around about my teens, I was obsessed with Discord Records in Washington DC, and that whole aesthetic of, I guess, hardcore music, but also DIY music. And Gringo Records, with Damn You promoters, brought in a lot of those bands to Nottingham. So bands that were influential on me, but also their new acts and also other bands from different labels. And I think they generated a core of my demographic, let's say, of music in Nottingham. So Gringo Records really are, and Matt hopefully won't mind me saying, the granddaddies of DIY music in Nottingham. Louder City, there's Low Point Records, this is where I'm going to start forgetting names. A band called I Am Lono. If you're saying whether it's a friend of mine who's in I Am Lono, it's largely their band. And if you say whether that's the type of music I normally listen to, no, but the music, the songs are really well structured that I often end up singing them. I walk around the house and the song will pop back in my head. And I'm sure I've offended countless people who are going to refuse to work with me now or even talk to me because I've failed to raise their names. But Nottingham is strong in its diverse musical influences and groups, labels, bands, and I've tried to become a bit more affiliated with that through curating and organising the Nottingham label market, where my key focus was not just being a sausage fest of white people listening to guitar music. I wanted it to be everything. I wanted dance music, I wanted hip hop in there, I would like metal, hardcore, noise, I want all of that in there, so that I can educate myself further. My main draw to buying vinyl and buying records are the stories that these records tell. I generally avoid getting reissues because there's something not disingenuous, because obviously it's a way, there's always new audiences, and it's very elitist of me to say I don't want reissues, because people coming in, as my main job as a lecturer, and I'm obviously educating people that were born at a particular time where that music wouldn't be readily available, so it does a very, very good thing. But I generally avoid them because I like the stories that records tell. I like the idea that somebody has picked up a record, they loved it, and then for whatever reason it's kind of moved on. Hopefully not through death. But there's all countless records I've got where people have customised them. I went into Rob's Records, which, if no one's been there, it's on Hertz Yard in Nottingham, and it's one of the strangest and most wonderful places. I went in, and this is true, with the explicit idea of picking up this record. When I want to find a copy of Original Gangsta OG by Rob, by Ice-T in Rob's Records. So I went straight in there, and I managed to find it. So I picked it up, £3, took it home, went to put it on, and what someone had done had peeled off the label and made their own Yo MTV Raps logo on either side. So on one side it's got the pink with the yellow logo, the other side is the yellow with the pink logo. And years ago, if you'd asked the teenage version of me that liked things to be pristine, you'd have magazines that were never creased and the VHS tapes would have been at the time without a dent on them. And if you went up to him and said that you would be embracing records that have been effectively butchered, he'd think you had gone mad.